Majority, if not all of Wuthering Waves' player base got into the game because of its combat system. It's a game that people saw to have skill expression that would bring a satisfying combat experience. But with the game out, did it really live up to that expectation? With the game being finally out, after all the CBTs, we can finally experience the combat system people were hyping up. And I have to say, it definitely has some things that I did and didn't like when it came to the combat system. For the most part though, I do enjoy the game's combat experience. But before I go into the good, let's talk about what I don't like. Now, coming from combat-oriented games like Monster Hunter, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and even Souls-likes like Elden Ring, I kind of had high expectations for the combat system, which would kind of set me up for disappointment because I don't think gacha games usually have deep and complex combat systems. So I'll just put that disclaimer out there, being someone who played these types of games that I just mentioned. Now, there are two things that I didn't really like about Wuthering Waves' combat. The first one is how wide the window is for your quote-unquote perfect dodge. As satisfying as it is to see the characters do a cool-ass flip when you trigger the perfect dodge, it doesn't feel as satisfying knowing that I dodged too early, but it still counted. I feel like the game is babying me by giving a lot of leeway, and with seemingly mistimed dodges still counting, it really does loosen the definition of a perfect dodge. And on the topic of babying, I was disappointed when I found out that the parry doesn't have its dedicated button, and instead, it's triggered by your attacks. So to trigger a parry in this game, there is a clear signifier that an attack is parryable when a golden circle appears while the enemy is attacking. And right before the outer ring aligns with the inner ring, you have to attack the enemy with the basic attack, heavy attack, skill, or an echo to trigger a parry. With the design decision of parry being tied to your attacks, it lowers the skill ceiling of parries. You could trigger a parry just by mashing buttons because you have so many options for triggering it. So at any point in your combos, it could just happen. Given that it wouldn't be a guaranteed parry because you'd still have to be lucky with the timing of your attack and the enemy's attack, it still happens pretty often. It had happened to me multiple times already. You're not fully punished by mashing, and is sometimes rewarded because even if you don't study up on a boss's attack pattern, you can still somewhat easily parry their attacks without even thinking about it. Now, I know that these games usually try to cater to a more casual player base, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel dissatisfied with a lowered skill ceiling. I think a lowered skill floor without lowering the ceiling would be a perfect balance for a game like this, but that is just my opinion. I understand if others wouldn't want that in a gacha game, because most gacha games aren't like that. It does kind of enable more people to be introduced to a more skill-expressive combat system though, which is a good thing. If you've reached this part of the video, there's a good chance that you're actually enjoying what you're watching. So if you do like this type of content and would want to see more of my videos and more Wuthering Waves content, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe because there are a lot of new people who are finding my channel. You'd be doing a lot just by hitting that subscribe button and help the channel reach 400 or even 500 subs soon. Okay, back to the video. Now let's move on from that because those are really only two things that lower the skill ceiling but doesn't really remove the skill expression in the game. I am in love with Wuthering Waves' combat system as a whole, in spite of those two complaints I have. The first positive thing I want to bring up is just how deep each character's moveset is. And this applies to the 4 stars, not just the 5-star characters. Each one has a completely unique gameplay experience because of how complex they can get. Some characters have multiple combo routes just from their basic attacks, just like how Ling Yang's mid-air attack changes if it follows up his heavy attack. Most of the time though, it's their forte circuit or their passives that create the complexity in the characters. This is basically the different colored bars each character has above their health bar. Each character's forte circuit works differently. They could have different ways of filling up the bar, or they could affect one character's basic attack, but another character would have its skill be the one affected. Or it could even give a character a new stance in the case of Ling Yang, or even an install in the case of Yuan Wu. And if you don't know what I mean by an install, in fighting game terms, it's like a buffed up version of a character where their attacks act differently or do more damage in this new form that they get. The way all these give the characters a deep moveset and complexity rewards players who have full understanding of the characters they play because it's not as simple as smashing the buttons to do more damage. There is a proper approach to the characters in order to release their full potential that you are able to do much better the more you play the characters. This because you continue learning their intricacies the more you play the character, even after reading up on their skills and doing their skill training. Now going back to the two things that I was disappointed with earlier, with lowering the skill ceiling with a perfect dodge and parrying, they don't really remove the fact that this game does have a perfect dodge and a parry mechanic, which raises the ability of its player base to showcase their skills to make for a rewarding combat system. Having defensive mechanics open a player's ability to showcase their skill because you're not being hindered by your stats or the enemy's stats. This gameplay design stops it from being a game that's all about grinding or spending money to get the best weapons or echoes in order for you to progress through the more difficult parts of the game. Because it's not all about how much damage your character has with the items you have equipped. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but I saw a clip that went viral on Twitter, or X, whichever you prefer. But this was a clip of someone taking on the level 120 bear using a level 1 Tao Chi. And that's absolutely fucking insane, that the game allows you to carry yourself with pure skill. Hell, I'm already Union level 22 and have been fighting level 45 bosses without leveling up my characters that much. They're only level 30 and I plan to keep it that way until I absolutely cannot progress the story without leveling them up because I enjoy the challenge of under-level fights, given that I actually have the resources to progress with skill expressive combat. Although one could argue that maybe the game is too easy with how you are able to clear the higher level bosses with under-leveled characters. But I can't really say anything about that right now with how young the game is. But I would like to know what your stance on that is. If you think the game is just really too easy, or you think the game has a combat system that's actually well designed to give them this opportunity to take on the more difficult bosses without leveling up their characters. And with the game growing by the day, with the amount of text that people continue to find, the game continues to impress with its complexity. You have probably seen the triple or super jump tech, or the plunge swap tech, which continues to show how deep the system can get. There's even a new tech that went viral on Twitter with how someone was cancelling Jian's launch attack into a gun character to keep the enemy in the air, then swap back into Jian while he's still mid-air so he continues his air combo even after swapping to and from a different character. I don't really know if they're called character cancels or negative edge because people are arguing with semantics because they don't really act the same in fighting games, but the name doesn't really matter here. It's the fact that these techs exist in the game that show the complexity of the combat system of Wuthering Waves. The usability and actual damage difference they bring to the table could be debated though, but these techs show that there might be even more things that we are able to do in the game but have not yet discovered. The possibilities are endless in this game's combat. In general, I think Wuthering Waves does a great job at allowing its players to express their skill with a satisfying combat experience. It doesn't force its players to get sucked into the gacha part of the game, at least for now. And I love that because your gameplay experience isn't reduced by being a free-to-play player. I would like to know your opinions on the game's combat system. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? As long as you're civil about it in the comments. So if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, and with a lot of you being new viewers, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel so we could hopefully reach 400 subs because we're really near that goal. That's it for this one. Thank you so much. Peace. Bye-bye.